brings us to item 9, final item, which is the Spatial Strategy Review update. Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. Just briefly recap the strategy will set out long-term development and based on traffic distribution, based on planning environment factors. The aim is to support government action for new homes and the need for new homes, new leadership perspectives, the AD strategy, economic strategy, and individual local plan reviews, and also provide a coherent basis for infrastructure needs to support major growth. In terms of progress, a substantial amount of analysis has been completed along with discussions with key infrastructure providers and statutory agencies. This has enabled the lead consultant, GL Hearn, to lead a discussion on potential distribution development. The indications at this stage are that the need for employment development can be met, and a significant proportion of the housing need can be met, but still with a significant shortfall. And there are issues around the distribution which they are looking at as well in terms of how much is spread between individual councils. So an action plan is proposed to address these issues. Good progress is being made with potential provision so far doubling existing permissions and allocations in terms of looking further ahead in terms of housing supply. But this and the action plan will be to resolve outstanding issues are key to supporting the government's aim to deliver new homes and to support the devolution agenda and our infrastructure and skills. Therefore, given the outstanding issues, it's recommended that there's a delay in public consultation until June 2016 to enable a collaborative approach to resolve some of these issues or look into some of these issues so we can give a clear sense of direction of travel and then seek to test that further in terms of public consultation. In terms of the outstanding issues, the first issue and probably the main issue is that some councils have indicated they cannot meet the needs assigned to them, and also there's an overall shortfall in terms of meeting needs across Southampton as a whole. The National Planning Guidance explains we should meet these needs in full unless there are strong environmental reasons not to. So these current positions of the shortfall need to be thoroughly tested and open to check and challenge by all councils. Give all of us the confidence that the shortfall is either being closed or minimised and the remaining shortfall is justifiable. So it is proposed that all councils will set out a position against a common template. The position of councils who cannot meet their needs will be tested first, recognising the distinct local needs which should, wherever possible, be met within their council area. And then if there's still an unmet need, the possession will be testing or reporting out to all councils, that's the proposal. Recognising that Southampton is an interconnected housing market area, some of the housing needs are interchangeable between different council areas. And also, I think critically, that national guidance is clear that where needs cannot be met in one area for environmental reasons, for example, adjoining areas should seek to meet them to ensure that overall needs are met. So really the aim is to thoroughly test, first of all, the areas that can't meet their needs, and then if needs be, also remaining areas, with the view to seeking the best distribution for growth in terms of all the factors, environmental and infrastructure factors. The second issue, more briefly, is testing that the rate of development is achievable. The lead consultant will look at that again based on both local and national experience of commercially deliverable rates of development. And the third and final issue, main issue, is checking and defining the transport assessment, which has fed into the proposed distribution so far, considering the proximity of development to major employment and service centres, to local facilities, and to public transport corridors, and the likely deliverability of new infrastructure, such as new railway stations associated with that approach. And also to test what would happen if they weren't and how robust is the strategy. It's important to stress, particularly in this context, that the strategy is strategic and long-term in nature, and there's obviously no certainty about long-term infrastructure provision. The aim is to ensure that the direction of travel is robust with a reasonable prospect of delivery, and that the transport and other assumptions are clearly set out in the strategy to allow a future review if necessary. So to wrap up, to support a collaborative approach, it's recommended that the work is conducted on a thorough and transparent basis, so that all councils can understand and check and challenge the proposals being put forward by other councils, The aim is to work together to resolve the outstanding issues, to agree a strategy for wider public consultation, to support the provision of new homes and economic growth, to support local plan reviews and infrastructure needs.
Okay, thank you very much, Graham, for that helpful summary of the report. Just to put it in a bit of perspective before we move on and see what Anne's about to say in terms of debating it. Of course, the existing push spatial strategy, which is a non-statutory document, runs to 2026, so it does have another 11 years to run. What we're looking to do is to roll it forward by another decade to 2036. Of course, there's a number of local councils running their plans forward to that year in any event. I think there's an amount of sort of misconception and misinformation around that because the government came up with localism and local plans and no more top-down housing figures, that suddenly housing need would perhaps overnight just go away, and the bottom-up approach, where local planning authorities came up with their own housing figures, would then take over. And of course that's probably what a lot of people thought would happen until we learned about this thing called objectively assessed housing need. The housing figures in the strategic housing market assessment, they're not figures produced by the councils in this room, they're not figures produced by Push. As it says on the tin, they've been objectively assessed by independent consultants. But of course the problem then is that we need to find how we're going to accommodate them across the area, which of course is a very real challenge, and we can't dismiss them because unfortunately appeal inspectors use them, and a number of us have found that to our own distaste in some decisions, that those figures are then used against us. So clearly they do need to be planned for. We need to plan for them right across the South Hampshire area, because if we don't, we will be picked off one by one with hostile planning appeals. So it is an important piece of work, and clearly it's right that we should do what we can to get it right by agreement across all local authorities to then be consulted upon before that non-statutory spatial strategy finally gets adopted. So would anybody like to comment on that? Was Graham any questions or general comment? Yes, Martin first.
Yes. Probably predictable. Certainly Test Valley, we recognise the usefulness and also the robustness of the objectively need housing surveys, and in fact it was himself, and we treated him to speak in our council offices, told us it was up to us to determine our own housing numbers, and then of course we were then told yes, we've got the evidence base, and to that end we certainly have exceeded even the South East Plan figures. And we certainly would welcome the essentially pragmatic delay until June for these figures to come out. But I think it's important really to echo what you said, Chairman, at 2.12 on page 5, stage 1. You actually were, as normal, incredibly wise at the last meeting when you agreed that we also should look at the need for objectively assess land availability as well as objectively assess housing need. And such a process would inevitably involve the consideration of comments by those authorities who would make their need on the assumption that all private councils could not fund so. It's important that whilst we've got this breathing space, that we actually look at both objectively assess land availability as well as need. And certainly our own authority, even in the days when Council Perry was leader, we were meeting the unmet supply of housing in Southampton and Eastleigh, which we are in the main quite a large dormitory settlement for the employment societies Southampton and Eastleigh, so we're already doing our bit.
Thank you very much. Guy,
thank you, Chairman. This stands as one authority who've gone through that process. We have that plan, which is at stage 2 for the group as NPPF compliant. we've gone through the learning curve of our own objectively assessed need, which has seen more than a doubling of the rate of housing. We also have unique difficulties in the north, which is the South West National Park, which is an area that's always around the table share, who are taking 10% of the housing within our geographical strategy, while within the stance to take 90%. So we're taking quite an excess of the housing that can't be delivered within the park for environmental reasons. I think from an East House point of view, we're very anxious that we can't let our very newly approved and endorsed plan be undermined by another plan that doesn't say fixed. So from our point of view, it's very important that what we have, and we contributed very openly with officers and push and housing numbers that we have, it really needs to match what we've got in the dark ground at the moment. I know that you do make an emphasis that the plan is not statutory. When we get to appeals with developers in our own territory, the SHNAR's been carried out correctly, it's been put forward as local evidence, regardless that it may or may not be a statutory document as a road plan. What I'd be very keen to have, there is a question to ask it now, by setting the scene, so I steer it, but very keen to find out from Mr. Tuck what the proposed process is for looking at the house that hasn't got power to identify local planning authorities to take it on, and how the plan is to close that gap. And then I've got a second question.
Okay. Right.
I think in broad terms at this stage, in terms of sites which aren't already permitted or allocated, there's two main potential sources of supply. One is from urban supply, so that's particularly the two cities, but also the larger towns, and another, obviously the emphasis is first on using urban sites for a whole range of reasons. If that doesn't fully close the gap, then the next is potential further expansions of settlements onto greenfield countryside land. So both of those is a need, again, adopting this two-stage process of looking first at districts who say they can't meet their own needs for other councils to be able to check that. I mean, before terms, looking at things like evidence of other sites, understanding the process councils have gone through in terms of identifying sites and then looking at the planning capacity on those sites. And then in terms of potential greenfield sites, I think our suggestion, I think this needs to be discussed, but our suggestion is that apart from a very broad process, at this early stage is potential taking stock as to each council to suggest, as you just have done, local circumstances for applying all of the areas across the council, so we can start to unblock and devise a kind of overall criteria and then assess everything against that, see what's coming up in terms of global issues and then look on a consistent basis and how criteria reflect that to then see if there is a certain unmet need, how we can distribute it.
Yeah.